Hey everyone, how's it going? I just finished building this project out. Basically what it is you type in a word. So let's say the word is test, and then you could hit enter, or you could click this nice little button, and it's going to give you all of the definitions for the word test. So maybe I want a different word, let's say another. And now you can see all the definitions for another, programming, and it also has error handling. So if you type in a word that doesn't exist, it'll give you a little warning. If you like it and you want to see how we build it, feel free to stick around. Alright, so once I'm in the directory that I want this project to be in, I'm going to type vue create, and then the directory that I want this to be called, which for me the project is going to be called dictionary-tutorial. Now what I'm going to do is press the down arrow, and then I'm going to hit enter because I want vue 3. This is going to take a few minutes, so I'm just going to skip this, but come back when your install is all done. Alright, once the install is all done, we can open this up in a text editor. I'm going to do that by saying code, then the name of the project. Now the first thing we want to do here, as always, is get rid of all the boilerplate code. So I'm going to clear out the template, and I'm going to clear out the script, but I'm going to leave the name app, and I'm going to clear out the style. I'm also going to remove this components folder altogether because we do not need components for this. And that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is just type up the HTML, get that out of the way. So the first thing we're going to need here is a form. And we're going to need to say submit and then prevent, because we're not going to want the default, which is submitting a form. We want this to just be a JavaScript form. And let's call this get definition. This form is going to have an input. Let's give it a placeholder that equals my word. A type equal to text, and an ID equal to word. Let's do a button as well. This is going to be the type of submit. For the inner HTML, we can say get definition. Alright, I'm going to hold control and tilde to open up my terminal, and I'm going to say npm run serve so that we can see what we're working with here. And you'll see we have this very simple form. So the first thing that we can do is get what is being typed in, right? So we can do that by first putting a vmodel up here. And let's set the vmodel equal to word. And now we're going to be accessing it in our script. In order to do that, since we're using the composition API, we're going to call this setup method. And then inside of this, let's say const word equals ref. It's going to be just a quote, but we have to import ref first. So import ref from view. And this is going to need curly brackets. And it's giving us an error because we're not returning it yet. So at the end of the setup method, let's call return curly brackets, and let's say word. Alright, now it should be reading that, and we're also not refreshing the page when we click get definition. That's why we prevent the default up here by saying prevent. So this is working pretty good so far. The next thing that we're going to have to do is add some kind of a submit functionality. Now we do have this nice function called getDefinitions, so let's write out this function, or at least start. The first thing that we can do here is simply console log word. Forgot to say the function keyword. There we go. I'll open up my console. Let's just make sure this is working. So actually, you know what? Let's console log word value since it's a ref. And let's make sure this is working. Blank string. That's good. Test. And we're getting test. Hello. Perfect. It's reading just like we want it to. Now what we can do with this is we can create our API string. So let's say const URL equals. Now I'm just going to paste this in. I'll leave it in the description so that you know what it is. But this will essentially get us a random word. Well, not a random word, a word. But we have to add the word at the end of this. So if I put test, it would get us test. And all of the definitions and similar words and everything else that a dictionary API can get you. But what we want to do is add our word at the end of it. So plus word value. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us a dynamic string every time, which is exactly what we want. Now we're going to be using Axios for this. So I'm going to say Control C here to end that. And I'm going to say npm I Axios -- save. And then import Axios from Axios. Run my server again. Now inside of this, let's say const brackets data, because we want to destructure the data from this, equals. Let's also make this an async function, and then we'll set this equal to await Axios get, and then we'll just pass the URL. Now just to show you that this is working, let's console log the data here and see what we're working with. So we just did test. Inside of our console, we get, well, nothing good. Let's see. Let me try refreshing it. There we go. Now it worked. I just had to refresh it for some reason. So you'll see the first thing that we get is we get 2 of these objects, right? So we have a 0 index and a 1 index. And inside of this, they have meanings, origin, all kinds of stuff. So if we go into the meanings, we get another array. Inside of that array, we get the definitions. So this is going to be a little bit of looping, and it's going to be a little tricky. But what we have to do here is look at the data path here, and then try to get to the definition. So we can do that by first saying data map. And what we can do here is we can actually destructure the meanings. Sorry, I think in order for destructure to work, you need to put parentheses. There we go. Now what we can say is meanings map destructure the definitions. Again, this needs parentheses in order for it to work properly. And then definitions for each. Now what we want to get here is the destructured definition. And inside of this function, let's say if type of definition equals a string. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to be getting anything undefined or something weird from this API. So let's say if it equals a string, then what we're going to do is we're going to display it, right? For now, let's just console log it. And let's see if this works. Get definition, check our console, and it does work. You'll see we're printing out all of the definitions. So this is working perfectly. Now, in order to display it, let's go back up to our template and let's make a new div. Let's say v4 and set that equal to definition in definitions array. And then inside of this, what we're going to want to do is make a div, which is just going to be our definition. We can do that with double curly braces and just say definition. Now, this is giving us an error, right? Because definitions array doesn't actually exist yet. Also, it needs a key. So let's make the key appear by saying :key. And let's just set that equal to the definition, right? Because it's not going to have two definitions. So this still won't work because what we need to do now is say const definition array and set that equal to a ref. This ref is going to be an array. And instead of console logging, what we can do is say definitions array value and push that. Now let's put test, and that did not work. And the reason it didn't work is because I forgot to return it. Sorry about that. Let's make sure to return this value. There we go. And it looks really ugly right now. I know. We're going to style this up towards the end, but just bear with it for now. One problem that you're going to notice with this is, once I hop out of this inspector, if I type something that's not a real word, it just doesn't do anything. Now we can fix this. So the first thing that we could do is in our template, let's go under the form, let's say p_if, let's call it valid query. And let's actually say if it's not a valid query, what we can say is error, the word you are searching for does not exist. Please try a different word. Just a little message like that, and we won't see it. Well, I guess we will see it because valid query doesn't actually exist, but we're going to make it exist right now. Inside of the setup, let's say let valid query equal ref, and this is going to start out by equaling true. Then let's return it, and now we won't see it, which is perfect. But we want to be able to see it when there's an error. So what we can do is wrap all of this function inside of a try catch. So let's say try catch. Now, if there's an error, what we're going to do is say valid query equals false. Sorry, valid query value equals false. So let's try test again, and then let's try a word that we don't know, and there you go, we got the error. And to clean this up a little bit more too, let's make sure that each time this is called, we're getting rid of all of the old definitions. So at the very start of the function, before the try catch even, let's say definitions array value splice, and we're going to want to go from the 0 index all the way to the definitions array value length. So now if we say test, and then we say another, it gets rid of the old stuff, and if we say a word that doesn't exist, it also gets rid of the old stuff. And that's all we really need to do for our basic JavaScript functionality. The app is fully working, but we can still style it up and make it look pretty. Now, in order to style this, I'm going to use this materialized CSS because this is something that I really like. So I'm just going to be using the styling. I don't need the script at all, I don't think. So I'm going to copy that, and inside the public index.html, I'm going to paste it. You'll see it already looks a little bit better. Then what I can do is style the button too. In order to style the button, I'm just going to search for button. And let's see, what kind of a button do I want here? Let's go with this basic submit button. I think this looks pretty good. So I'm going to grab all these classes, copy that. In my template, I'm going to paste it for the button. And then I do also like that eye. I think that looks pretty cool. Now, the one thing that we don't have is the little submit symbol. That's fine. That's just because we're not using the icons, and I don't really want to add them in. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. Now, let's add a little bit more HTML, actually. Let's say header 5 here, and let's say word. We want the word. Let's say definition for, and then the word. And you know what? Let's give this a VF. And we'll only display this if there's a word. So there we go, because there's a word. And let's say word and word does not equal a blank string. And that's pretty cool. Now, while I type it out, so I can say hello, you'll see that there's going to be definitions here. Let's also give this a space colon. I like the way that looks a lot. I like how it starts typing with you. Cool. So now if we search one, it looks pretty clean too. Let's turn all these into little cards. I use these cards a lot. I think they look really nice from this library. So I'm actually just gonna copy this and what I'm gonna do is paste it. Now I'm going to want this v4 with the key to go on this UL. I'm going to use some very simple cards here. So let's give this v4 the ID equal to card container. And instead of just outputting this divider, we're just going to take the definition and delete that. And the definition is going to be what replaces the inner text. And there you go. Some very simple cards. Now what we can do is just add our own custom CSS to it to make it look a little bit more pretty. And we can do that right here inside of the style. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this whole thing inside of a div and give it the ID equal to app container. Then I'm going to say app container, and I'm going to give this a margin of 10 pixels. And I actually think this looks really clean. So that's actually all the styling that I'm going to be adding. It's really mostly just being brought in from the library. I really love this library. I definitely recommend checking it out. Yeah, so that's the end of this project. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to see more projects just like this, leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And have a great day. Take it easy.